Hey, it's James. Welcome to LearnLogicPro.com. Today we're going to look at snap and drag. So if you look here in the arrange window, you have snap and drag. So let's start with snapping. The idea of snapping is essentially as you move regions along the timeline, you'll notice that it basically snaps to a incremental grid. Essentially a grid that's specified by ticks or samples or whatever you want to call them. So here you have the Smart Snap. Now, the Smart Snap mode is essentially what is default, and this relies on you using key commands to be able to essentially slip within the grid. So as you move it along and you add control on your keyboard, you'll notice that it slides it a little bit better. Holding down shift as well as the control slows it way down, and you see that it's moving by SMPTE time ticks all the way down, 230, 229, very, very slow. Okay, so this allows you to place any clip along the timeline down to a SMPTE time accurate placement. If you change this to bar, you'll notice that this moves only incrementally by bars. Changing this to beat moves it by beats. I mean, it's pretty straightforward stuff here. Division in between that. And then we've got ticks, which are even smaller. Frames. Quarter frames, especially when you're doing video. Samples. You can snap to an absolute value. You can snap automation. And you can do an automation snap offset. But here we're talking about just the region snapping. So you see that in samples it's moving very slow. Now you also notice that it's still not moving quite as slow as adding control and shift. So those are still modifiers. Those are still something that you will want to press if you want to get all the way down to the SMPTE time. Even though the resolution for snap is at the lowest, being samples, you still can add those two modifier keys to actually make it move even slower. So that is snapping in Logic Pro 8. The next option is drag. Now, Logic typically is an overlapping oriented application. So if I took this blues and I laid this over the top of that, both parts are playing. Actually, the top part plays, it overlaps, but it plays what's on top. Okay. And so if I move this away, you'll notice that what's underneath is still there. It just simply overlaps. And you can do crossfades between these points to smooth that overlap sound, but it's really pretty neat how you can just overlap things. Now with MIDI, it will play, as it overlaps, it will play multiple MIDI parts that are layered on top of each other. Audio, it just plays on what's on top. If I change this to no overlap, something quite cool happens. If I move this blues guitar over the top of the live drums, you notice when I drop it, it actually is going to cut what was underneath. It does not allow the overlap, and it just basically edits and cuts what's underneath. If I move this away, you'll notice that the thing's cut now. It's gone. Okay? And that's what no overlapping does. So essentially you could take an entire section, drag that entire section over something else, let it go, and it basically cuts that. If you wanted to drag an entire chorus or a verse over the top of another section, or a guitar part that is the final guitar part you like, you want to take that and drag it over and no overlap, cutting out what's underneath, that's your option there. X-Fade, now I'm using Apple Loops unfortunately, but which don't allow crossfading, interestingly enough. But if I drag this file on top of the other file, it automatically does an X-Fade between those 2 points. It's an automatic crossfade, which is very, very, very nice if you're just pushing audio files together, multiple audio files together that you want to crossfade. Shuffle right and shuffle left. Now, shuffle right essentially, if I've got this section here and I delete just a piece, I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to delete this with the marquee tool because the marquee tool works quite well with the shuffling option. Excuse me. If I move this here and I delete, you notice these items here, everything's shuffled to the right, moved down based on the amount of cut. Let's undo that. So obviously shuffle left would be the exact opposite of that. So if I highlighted this section here and I cut, everything shuffles to the left. So that's shuffle right and shuffle left. So we've got, again, in the snap option, we've got the movement of the regions along the timeline and the snap value of that. And shuffle, we have different drag options, overlapping, no overlapping, shuffle left and right, and an X fade to do an automatic crossfade between two region points.